Hello everybody, this is my project. My name is Gavin and this is my charity proposal. So first of all, there's a big and often overlooked issue in the United States, and this issue needs to be dealt with. Well, what is this issue? Well, Black communities often have a lack of educational resources and safe spaces. And this lack of resources affects millions across the country. And I'll discuss this further in main point number 1. But first, let's get into my thesis, and that is that our CFO should donate $10,000 to the No Name Book Club, a charity that I will explain further later, and that helps resolve the issue that I just mentioned. In terms of credibility, why am I talking about this? What do I know? Well, I actually own a charity. The One World Project is what it's called. So I have knowledge of charities and just what kind of work the No Name Book Club is doing. I see the merit of them and how much work they're doing, what kind of good they're doing, and how they can help in the future as well as right now. So let's do a quick preview of my main points before I get into it. Point number 1, lack of educational resources in some Black communities negatively affects millions. Number 2, the No Name Book Club helps solve this issue. And number 3, millions can benefit from the No Name Book Club. So let's get right into my first point right here. Lack of educational resources in some Black communities negatively affects millions. So a quick background, a little context to this point right here. In the 1970s, President Richard Nixon instituted the war on drugs, is what it's now called. Essentially what that is he just cracked down a lot tougher, a lot harder on drug-related offenses and drug-related crimes. And this mainly affected Black communities, and that's according to the ACLU and drugpolicy.org. So why did this mainly affect Black communities? Well, it's because that they were actually targeted by the war on drugs. The former chief of staff for Richard Nixon, he said in an interview once that the war on drugs was specifically designed to target Black folks and the anti-war left, is what he said. So since then, systemic issues have continued and exacerbated the devastation that was caused by Nixon and his war on drugs. So let's continue with this point, look at some numbers of just how much Black communities are affected by this issue. Well, we see that Black people are 3 to 9 times more likely to be killed by police than white people, and that's according to a study done by Schwartz et al. And that Black people are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white people, and that's according to the Sentencing Project. Continuing with this main point, we see that there are many systemic contributors to this issue, such as over-policing, racism in courts, etc. And again, that's according to Schwartz et al. And the Sentencing Project. And one result of this is that Black communities are often overlooked and neglected. So I'm going to show you a clip really fast. It's from the movie If Beale Street Could Talk. I believe it represents this principle extremely well.
The self was very simple, and the cause was simple too. The kids have been told that they weren't worth shit, and everything they saw around them proved it.
So from that clip, we saw what I mentioned, the neglect and the devastation of Black communities that comes from that neglect. So moving on with this main point, we see that communities communities devastated by the war on drugs need but often lack safe spaces and educational resources to disrupt the cycles of violence and incarceration that I mentioned previously. And that's according to the very Institute of Justice. But how does this happen? How are these cycles disrupted? Well, that's where the No Name Book Club comes in. And that brings us to my second point, that the No Name Book Club helps solve this issue. So a little background on the No Name Book Club. The No Name Book Club operates a library in Los Angeles. And this library acts as a huge academic and educational resource, because it's a library, and a safe space for Black and brown people in Los Angeles. Los Angeles, specifically the area of Compton in Los Angeles, is especially important involving this issue because Compton is one area that has been massively impacted by the war on drugs and other systemic factors that I mentioned previously. So continuing with this, the No Name Book Club in their library, they allow for empowerment through education. It also creates a safe space in a community that is plagued by these systemic issues that I mentioned. So these two things disrupt the cycles of incarceration and violence that I mentioned earlier. So let's visualize what this looks like, and that's where my main point number 3 comes in. Millions can benefit from the No Name Book Club. By creating a safe space, the No Name Book Club in their library disrupt dangerous cycles, and that's what I just mentioned. Disrupting these cycles prevents current and future generations from being victims of the discriminatory system from being more likely to become killed by a police officer or going to prison. That disrupts all that. So this disruption has the potential to benefit millions of people and their families. Even if just one family, and just that one family, if that cycle is disrupted, then their kids, etc. For generations, they are impacted in a positive way. And that's according to a study done by Plow. So now that we've discovered that and visualized that, let's circle back to my thesis. And that is that our CFO should donate $10,000 to the No Name Book Club. Continuing with our circling back, let's review our main points again. And that is that my main point number 1, lack of educational resources in some Black communities negatively affects millions. Main point number 2, the No Name Book Club helps solve this issue. And main point number 3, millions can benefit from the No Name Book Club. So where do we go from here? What can be done? Well, as I mentioned, funding to continue the No Name Book Club in the library will benefit many. So I heavily and strongly encourage the CFO to donate the $10,000 to the No Name Book Club so they can keep running their library and help millions for generations to come. And for whom it may concern, here is a list of my references. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.